Race to the White House is turning out to be no less than an edge-of-the-seat thriller. The ferocity of the contest is multiplying every single hour as the D-Day now approaches. Both the candidates, former President Donald Trump and the current Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, like clashing gladiators in the Coliseum, are leaving absolutely no stone unturned to win votes. The battle is the most intense in the 7 swing states that are set to hold the key to the White House. It's that moment in the presidential election in which everyone seems to be picking a side. There is the mighty Elon Musk. He's openly endorsing Donald Trump. On the other hand, there are global celebrities like Taylor Swift, Jennifer Lopez, Beyonce, George Clooney, Harrison Ford, among others, endorsing Kamala Harris. Can the celebrity influencers swing the US presidential poll? And how tight is the competition this time round in the race to the White House? That's a question that many are indeed asking. Now, it also remains to be seen as to how the different communities in the United States actually vote. There are more than 5.5 Indian Americans, members of the Indian diaspora living in the United States as well. What kind of an impact will their vote hold in the coming election? Last time round, of course, in 2020, Donald Trump took on Joe Biden, who was the Democrat presidential nominee, and Joe Biden managed to win, albeit by a relatively close margin, against Donald Trump. Let's in fact get you some ground reports as well from the United States.
Both the sides are leaving no stone unturned to woo voters. So far, 72 million people have cast early votes. And on the D-Day, we are expecting that record number of people will cast their votes. Both parties are now going door to door, knocking on people's doors and asking them to get out and vote, because the feelings amongst the people are very strong for either sides. And it remains to be seen which side is going to win. Yesterday, I was at a Kamala Harris rally event in the state of Virginia, and we saw that there was a lot of intense pressure on the volunteers to knock on each door.
Now, members of the Indian diaspora progressively with every election have been exercising a fair amount of influence on the outcomes to the presidential polls. Now, let's give you a perspective as to why their vote is so important this coming election. There are approximately 5.2 million Indian Americans residing in the United States. Nearly 2.6 million Indian Americans are eligible to vote. They are the second largest immigrant community in the country after Mexicans. The median household income is double that of the entire United States as far as the Indian American community is concerned. There are more than 700,000 Asian Indians in 7 swing states as well, and ultimately their mandate or their vote could have an influence on the outcome. Here's another ground report.
It's very difficult to predict right now. There are 7 swing states and both the candidates are neck to neck. Traditionally, Indians have voted for the Democratic Party because it has had a softer stance as far as immigration is concerned. There are 5 congressmen right now at the federal government level, and most of them are from the Democratic Party. But that said, Indians are very influential. They are wealthy, most of them. 5 to 6% of the US population comprises of Indian immigrants. But they contribute taxes to the tune of $200 to $300 billion. So it's a very influential bloc in that sense. And Trump has been emphasizing that he's going to cut taxes for the wealthier classes of the society. And there are some Indian immigrant voters who are tilting towards voting for Trump.
Now, with the election campaigns of both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump coming to a close ahead of the all-important presidential polls set to take place on the 5th of November, Donald Trump launched a last-ditch effort to woo voters in the swing states, such as Pennsylvania. Now, during his rally in the state, the former US president launched a blistering attack on the current president, Mr. Joe Biden, as well as Trump's opponent, the current Vice President, Kamala Harris.
Nobody knows where the other guy is. Where the hell is he? Where the hell did he go, David? Where is he? Nobody knows where the hell. Where is Biden? Remember? We used to go, where's Hunter? We used to go, where's Hunter? Now we go, where the hell is Biden? Where's Joe? You know, when you think they stole the election. It was just, they walked in, they said, you're out. Right? That's a threat to democracy. They call me threat to democracy. They stole the election from this guy. Whether you like him or not, they stole the election. They walked in. They said, get out of here, Joe. You're out. You're dead. You're out, Joe. And man, oh man, he likes me better than he likes her, I really believe. And you have to tell Kamala that you've had enough, Kamala. You've had enough. You're the worst ever. Kamala, you're fired. Get the hell out of here. Get out of here.
Now, we also spoke to Suhas Subramaniam, who is the Virginia state senator. Listen into his take on the coming election.
Hello and welcome to Times Now. I'm Malvika Jain and I have with me Suhas Subramaniam, who's running for Congress from the Democratic Party right here in the state of Virginia. Suhas, welcome to Times Now.
Thank you.
My first question to you is that, at the campaign event today, we have seen some Republicans also participating. What is it that is motivating Republicans to support a Democratic candidate like yourself?
Yeah, I've always told people that I want to be a voice for all Virginians, Democrats and Republicans. And so I also want to make sure that we unite people and bridge the divides in our politics, because our politics has been more divided than ever before. And so part of that means welcoming Republicans who want to support me and doing rallies like this with them. And so it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, we're a campaign where people can get behind it.
Well, some Republicans are also supporting Kamala Harris. Why is that? Why aren't they supporting Trump? Because the race seems to be pretty tight, and that means that he does have substantial support.
Yeah, people are concerned about a couple of things. One, our democracy generally, because Trump has said many anti-democratic things. And January 6th, things like that were very difficult for our community and for our country. And so we want to make sure that we protect that. Locally, actually, federal workers here are actually under attack. He would fire federal civil servants if elected. And so that's really bad for our economy here. And so you see a lot of Republicans that work in the federal government who are supporting our campaign.
Sure. You have Indian origins. And what do you think the outcome of the presidential elections could mean for India and Indian immigrants who are living in the U.S.?
Yeah, for India, I just want to make sure we have a strong U.S.-India relationship, regardless of who's president. I think Trump has vowed to do that. I think Harris has vowed to do that. I also want to make sure that we have an immigration system that works for people who are coming over on, say, H-1B visas, who are trying to get green cards, waiting 10, 15 years. My parents immigrated here in the late 70s. They got their green card in 3 months. And so we need to do more for people when it comes to legal immigration. We can do border security. We can try to address undocumented immigrants as well. But let's do more on legal immigration and for the Indian diaspora.
And do you think Kamala Harris would also be favorable towards India? Because there are certain remarks she has made, for instance, on the issue of Kashmir, which is not in line with the Indian government's stance.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I know that regardless of who's president in India, the U.S.-India relationship is so critical to the world, really. It's two of the most important democracies out there, and we need to make sure that we strengthen that relationship. And it doesn't have to be at the expense of any other region, but we certainly already have a very strong economic relationship. I think there's more we can do on the defense side. I think long-term, this is going to be a really fruitful relationship if we just continue the momentum.
Sure. And my last question to you is that it's a very, 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 very close race. Who do you think is going to win?
I have no idea. Like I was saying to someone earlier, I'm really bad at predicting who wins these elections. I do know that if we get out the vote and we fight, we'll win my race for certain. I do know that if we make sure that every person comes out and votes, that Kamala Harris would likely win as well.
Now, Times Now has also been tracking all the developments on the ground quite closely. We've also spoken to some very influential insiders to get a detailed perspective on what promises to be an important election for India as well. For instance, there are persons of Indian origin involved in both the political parties, the Democratic Party as well as the Republican Party. Kamala Harris's mother hails from India, and on the other side, Donald Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance's wife, Usha, is also of Indian origin. Another person of Indian origin that you may hear a lot in the future is Ashwin Ramaswamy, who is a 25-year-old Democrat and a candidate for the Georgia State Senate. Here's what he had to say when we spoke to him.
My first question to you is that, at such a young age, you're the first and the youngest Hindu young candidate to have been nominated by the party as its official candidate. What has been your journey like, and what motivated you to join politics?
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. It's been an incredible journey. And my own background is I grew up in the suburbs of Atlanta, a place called Johns Creek. My parents came here from India in the early 90s. And my own background is in computer science and law. But growing up here, I got so much from this diverse community here in America. And I always thought about how can I give back to my own community. Part of that came from my own Hindu upbringing and values. I went to a organization called Chinmaya Mission Balvihar, where I learned about my own values, culture, traditions. We learned about something called Seva, which means community service, giving back to the community and giving more than what we take. So that's what always stuck with me. So I did my undergraduate degree in computer science at Stanford and a law degree at Georgetown.
You are a son of immigrants. Immigration has been a key issue in the U.S. politics. It's also an issue for the U.S. presidential elections. What do you think are the other key issues for this presidential race? Because in addition to the Senate race for which you are contesting, the presidential elections are also underway in the U.S. and the voting will take place on the 5th of November.
So some of the key issues that we're facing is, first of all, gun safety. We have too many mass shootings happening and not enough action on gun control. So that's something I'll be fighting for at the state level. And I know the Harris-Walz ticket will be fighting for at the national level. The other big issue here is reproductive health care. We have in Georgia a very extreme abortion ban, which makes it hard for women to get life-saving treatments to ensure that they can have the health care that they need. The final issue is respect for democracy. We need leaders who are going to do the right thing and tell the truth and focus on protecting the right to vote. Those are the big issues that I see happening here in Georgia and across the country.
But if you look at the Trump campaign and the Harris campaign, what the sense that you're getting from the early voting results and also the polls that are taking place, that it's a very neck-to-neck tight race. Who do you think is likely to win? I know you're a Democrat, so you are likely to say it's Harris. But how concerned about you about the kind of performance we are seeing from Trump?
I mean, ultimately, this election is a choice between candidate like Trump, who represents the past and division, and a candidate like Harris, who represents the future, inclusivity, and investing in our future. I mean, the race is a toss-up, right? We've seen it's so close because there's a lot of good ideas from the Democratic end that are widely popular, but there's a lot of disinformation, a lot of misinformation we have to fight against, both at the national level and the local and state level as well. I think that's why it's so close. I think what we just have to do is continue to try as hard as we can, talking to voters, knocking on their doors, and doing the work needed to get people out to ensure that their voices are heard.
But just Ashwin, just like you, Harris also, her mother was an Indian and she also has Indian connections. And off late, we're seeing that more and more she's reaching out to the Asian community, to the Indian community. But the issue of Kashmir, which has been a source of tension between India and Pakistan, her position has been a little bit not in favor of India, if I would say. What do you make of this situation? Do you think if Harris is elected as the president of the United States, she would be pro-India and we will see the India-US ties strengthening further?
I would say the ties between India and the United States have been so important for both countries. Regardless of who's president of the United States, it is in the interest of the United States to pursue strong bilateral common ties with India. There's so many issues, whether it's immigration, whether it's trade, technology, talent, where we can work together. And that's exactly what I see from the Harris-Walz campaign. And that's what we expect will happen. And I think ultimately having someone like Kamala Harris, whose mother is Indian, she's also Indian and Black, she's going to be able to connect so much more with the Indian diaspora here and really strengthen those ties in a way that Donald Trump never really can.
But Trump has also made many attempts. You had the Howdy Modi event in Houston where he reached out to the Indian diaspora. So we cannot outrightly say that Harris would favor India more. But like you said, both parties don't have a choice but to see India as a close ally. And that's likely to be the outcome in the elections. But going back to the campaign and the mood.
One quick thing to add on that. I would just say, yes, I mean, Trump has done outreach to Indian community, but look at the results. If you look at the number of H-1B visas, for example, approved by the Trump administration versus the Biden administration, the Trump administration has drastically decreased that. So they may say that they're supporting Indian Americans, but their actions do not match their words.
Interesting. The other question that I had was that you mentioned about the Seva Bhav and how the Hindu values that you have received over the years have influenced the manner in which you have approached your political journey. Are there any Indian leaders or thought leaders who have inspired you through this process?
I would say my both leaders for me have been Mahatma Gandhi ji and Martin Luther King Jr. Because look at what Gandhi ji did. He was able to take the principles of Hinduism, universalize them, and use them to get people to understand here's how we can get independence from the British and how we can bring people together. And we've seen how powerful that's been both in India, but also inspiring leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. here in the United States. Both leaders were able to use the power of religion not to divide, but to unify. And that's exactly the path that I'm following, and I want to follow in both of their footsteps.
But that's a very valid and interesting point you make, because across the world, not just in the US and India, we are seeing that there is a rise in polarization, but at the same time, the democracies are becoming more and more important. You need democracies to stay and to prosper. Just in this light, what do you think will be your key message to your constituents? And this is my last question to you.
My key message to my constituents is think about investing in the long term. That's one thing which young people like me have that advantage, because we'll be around longer than everyone else. So for someone like me, I could have gone and made 6 figures at a tech company, but I decided to come home and run for office. Because for me, it's about the next 20, 30, 40 years. We want to have a state, a district, and a country where we're making investments in education, focusing on technology, entrepreneurship, thinking about the future, as opposed to dwelling on the past and the conflicts of the past. And that's really what I represent, and that's what I believe our district and our country will choose.
Actually, Ashwin, I just want to ask you one more question. You are seeing that more and more Indians are getting nominated for formal positions in politics, whether it's for a political office or as official candidates. What has been the change in thinking over the years, and what has been the role of the campaigns that Prime Minister Modi has been organizing, the big rallies that you're seeing organized by Modi, that is influencing this upgradation of the Indian image?
So Indian Americans have been around in the U.S. for a long time. In fact, we've been around here for centuries. There's a long history of Indian American in the U.S. From the early 1900s, when there are a lot of Bengalis in Harlem, to the Sikh Americans who'd be in California. And what's happened since the 60s, the 90s, that wave of immigration, is just we've become a more tolerant, multicultural society. So what we're seeing is a reflection of people understanding that the old ways of racism and bigotry and hatred does not work. And I think it's hand in hand. You know, once, if you think about it, after India got its independence, that was the same time when the U.S. actually allowed more Indians to come and immigrate to the United States. So that strong bilateral partnership between both countries increases mutual respect for people, citizens of both countries, and allows us to work together, and also allows Indian Americans to succeed here and give back to the community.
Now, another very influential person that we've spoken to is Raja Krishnamurthy, who is the Delhi-born US congressman. He was elected to the Congress in 2016 and is now in his 4th term representing the Illinois 8th District. He serves as ranking member of the Select Committee on the Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party, making him the first South Asian American in history to lead a congressional committee. Let's listen to what he had to say as well.
Hello and welcome to Times Now. I have with me Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy. He represents the state of Illinois and he belongs to the Democratic Party, the party which has fielded Kamala Harris as its presidential candidate in the upcoming elections, which are scheduled to take place on the 5th of November. Early voting has already started in some of the states. Congressman, given the early voting trend that we are seeing in some states, who do you think is going to win? Is Harris likely to be the next president of the U.S.?
I think so. I think that the number of women who are early voting is also a sign of enthusiasm among women. And Harris has a big edge over Donald Trump with regard to women. All that being said, I still think that this election is going to be very close. And I expect that, Tuesday night will be kind of a lengthy vote tallying evening.
Sure, and I wanted to ask you about Harris and the way she sees her Indian identity. She has steered clear of any debate on race and identity, so to speak. Yesterday, Donald Trump actually in his Diwali wish mentioned about the atrocities against Hindus in Bangladesh. He has talked about how he has a strong bond with Prime Minister Modi. But we don't see any such comments coming from Kamala Harris, or even a very vocal acknowledgement of the fact that she's from India, besides some time-to-time references to her mother's journey from India.
Well, I happen to know Kamala Harris somewhat well, and I know that she's very proud of her Indian roots. She talks to me about it. She talks to others about it. Her mother brought her up, and so being an Indian woman, her mother inculcated various values, as well as instilled in Kamala and her sister Maya a deep respect for their heritage. All that being said, Kamala Harris is trying to be president of all the United States, not just one portion or one ethnicity. And so I think it's very important for her to speak to kind of issues that resonate with everybody. All that being said, I think her mother's immigrant story is an important part of her own. And I know that she's very, very comfortable and proud to be a Desi.
So why is she not talking about the Desi issues, so to speak?
She is. I've heard her speak about these issues. At the same time, I've heard her speak about a lot of different issues. And what you learn in politics is that victory is about addition and multiplication. And so you have to bring a lot of groups together. You have to talk about the issues that are most common to everybody. And, right now, as you know, in America, the most important issues are the ones that are kitchen table topic issues, such as, lowering the cost of living, making sure health care and education are within reach of everybody, and making sure everyone has a job that enables them to get into the middle class.
Now, let's also not forget that it was the current President Joe Biden who Trump was initially supposed to have a rematch with, but the US president dropped out of the current presidential race after their first debate, paving the way for the current Vice President Kamala Harris to take on Trump. Biden has now continued to be involved in the discourse, however, though perhaps not always to Harris's benefit. After Donald Trump made hay over Biden calling his supporters garbage, Biden was in the eye of the storm once again for a remark on what he'd like to do to Republicans. Let's listen to what he said.
But I'm serious. These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass. But I'm serious. These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass. But I'm serious. These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass. But I'm serious. These are the kind of guys. But I'm serious. These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass. But I'm serious. These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass.